For the Sharks to improve this season, the goaltending must be better. Will it actually be better, though?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of Locked On NHL. I want to thank you for making the Locked On Sharks your first listen, proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day, or at least 3 or 4 days a week right now as we're in the off season. So if you want to be an everyday, all you have to do is just follow along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be digging into the goaltending, right? And trying to figure out, right, as the Sharks are hoping to make some improvements. And I think one of the big areas that will improve this year is the goaltending. As Yaroslav Askarov is coming in, and the Sharks acquired Alexandar Georgiev, and we're going to be kind of exploring that, comparing, what Askarov to Blackwood, what we saw from both of them last year, where Askarov needs to improve, and then why the Sharks made a massive improvement from Alexandar Georgiev with acquiring Alexandar Nedeljkovic. So let's start kind of with the ASCII thing, right? And I kind of got thinking about it yesterday after we talked with Summoning Salt, and like why there should be some reasons for optimism. And I don't think people realize, just one, how poor the goaltending was last year, and two, I think how much an improvement Askarov is expected to be, based on compared to what we saw last year for a majority of the season, right? And I was curious to see, right, because we hold the Mackenzie Blackwood, kind of up on this pedestal, especially the way he played in his short time with San Jose, but especially, kind of before he got traded, just how good he was for the San Jose Sharks, who, he kept them in a lot of games. And yes, I know they lost their first, 10 or 11 to begin the season last year, especially after Mackenzie Blackwood got, or not, after Macklin Celebrini got hurt, right? But, after Celebrini returned and he kind of got into the group, like the Sharks team was kind of solid. And we discussed yesterday, like they had, in that time from November 1st through the Blackwood trade on December 9th, like they were at like 0.94 points per game type of team, which puts them in that same amount of time, puts them around like 23rd in the NHL, which better than 32nd. So can ASCII, the big question is, can he replicate what Mackenzie Blackwood was doing? And I dug into the numbers to see how, again, both players playing on this Sharks team last season with terrible goaltending, so very similar situations. And they played similar, like close enough amount of games during their time. So, of course, Mackenzie Blackwood, right, started the season and was traded December 9th. Vitek Vanacek, of course, gets hurt like right before Blackwood gets traded, and he has to come up and start playing. And he ended up playing 13 games for the Sharks last year. Mackenzie Blackwood played 19. So let's kind of look at how these guys compared in their time with playing behind the same, relatively the same San Jose Sharks team. So Mackenzie Blackwood, like I said, 19 games last year, goals against average 3. Nice even 3, save percentage, and this is at all situations. So we're gonna talk about other situations here a little bit more later, but all situations, goals against average 3 for Mackenzie Blackwood. And this is only with his time with the San Jose Sharks. Save percentage of 909. He allowed 53 goals in that time. Expected goals allowed was 58.64. So he saved 5.64 goals saved above expected during that time, with a high danger save percentage of 843. So very solid numbers, right? And during, especially again, keeping in mind how poor the Sharks team was last year, but during that kind of magical time of November through the beginning of December before he got traded, the Sharks were a pretty competitive team during that time, right? You think about they blew out like the Kings and the Kraken like back-to-back games, and they were playing, pretty solid hockey during, again, small sample size, but we got to work with what we have to work with. Afterwards, of course, Mackenzie Blackwood gets traded. Vitek Vanacek goes down with a weird puck, hits him in the face and breaks his orbital bone. So he's out for, I think it was about 6 weeks. And then you have new goaltending between Mackenzie Blackwood and Alexandar Georgiev. So Askarov in his time with the Sharks posted, pretty similar numbers. So he played 13 games, 3.10 goals against with an 896 save percentage, 37 goals allowed with a 39.16 expected goals. And so he had 2.16 goals saved above expected with an 822 high danger save percentage. So again, nothing horrible. All those numbers are comparable, I would say, to Mackenzie Blackwood, right? And I know Blackwood played more games in that time, but like this, I'd say they're at least in the same ballpark. Like it's not some massive drop off from Mackenzie Blackwood to Askarov last season. And you're right, Askarov, who's going into last year had played 3 NHL games. To his, while Mackenzie Blackwood is a multi-year veteran. So of course there's going to be some more ups and downs, etc. And even this year, right? Going to this year, as Blackwood or as Askarov is expected to be the starter for the Sharks and play a full season in the NHL, there's going to be some ups and downs. Like I'm not trying to be delusional about it, but I do think like those numbers should be somewhat realistic for the Sharks to obtain, or at least for Askarov to obtain, especially with what I think is an improved defense, right? So if Askarov is anywhere kind of just close to those numbers, I think that is a area for, I think that's a win for the Sharks. And I think that is a big improvement for the Sharks, especially as we dig into Georgiev's numbers later. Like if Askarov is right around, like if he's around a 3 goals against and floating with a 900 save percentage and his goal saved above expected is positive, that's a massive win for the Sharks, especially compared to what they have played behind the past couple seasons, with the exception of Mackenzie Blackwood and the way he's performed with him. But with Blackwood, right, like he was a big reason for why the Sharks really played well, especially when Celebrini came back, because they had the confidence in their goaltending and because Blackwood was performing better than expected, right, with his goal save above expected, and just that kind of confidence, that swagger of having Mackenzie Blackwood back there. And I think Askarov, who we know is a pretty confident guy, who played well in a small time against a very bad Sharks team last year, who played extremely well with the much better Barracuda team last year. We saw his performances in the playoffs, where he was especially early, like against Ontario Reign, was just absolutely locked in. Like he played extremely well in the playoffs. Like he was not the reason why the Barracuda didn't win against Colorado. They just ran out of scoring, especially with MVP Andrew Podorowski missing. Like they just didn't have enough scoring in the playoffs, right? It wasn't Askarov's fault. Like Askarov kept the Barracuda in a lot of games, and they were trying to win every game 2-1, and they just ran out of firepower. But I think with Askarov, like you see the confidence in how players play in front of him, because they know if I make a mistake, most likely Askarov's got me covered. And we even when we talked about this last season when the Sharks acquired him and when he played his first couple games with the Barracuda, just how much of a difference it makes having Yaroslav Askarov back there. And I don't see why that confidence and why that isn't going to change jumping from the AHL to the NHL. I think as he gets more comfortable, you're going to see that swagger, that confidence, and almost cocky, borderline cockiness at times return to, and it's infectious. And I think it's going to help this Sharks team, much like when we saw with Blackwood back there, where as long as 30's back there, it feels like we have a good chance to win this. And we saw it last year at times too. Think back to that Oilers game where Askarov stood on his freaking head until the very, very end, and the Oilers won it very late and tied it very late and won it in overtime. I think Askarov is going to help solidify the position. So where does he need to improve? I think is the big question, right? And how do you get those numbers closer to what Blackwood's numbers were? I got the answer for you, and we're going to dig into that here in just 1 second. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes concert tickets getting them faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. My wife has used Game Time to get tickets to go see Backstreet Boys. She, as most millennials, grew up loving Backstreet Boys, but unfortunately, she was never ever able to go see them because she's from the Midwest, and they would only go to the Midwest or the middle of the week. And of course, mom and dad aren't going to let her go on a school night. So she's finally getting to go. She used Game Time. She's going to Vegas to see them at the Sphere. She wanted to make sure she had good views, but was able to see the whole Sphere. Game Time made it super easy with their panoramic seat view. She was able to compare prices from different zones, made it really easy. So you too can take the guesswork out of buying tickets for shows and concerts with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, before we continue, of course, want to thank you for making the Locked On Sharks your first listen. If you haven't yet, perfect time to subscribe. We have plenty of fun interviews coming up. We're probably going to have about one a week kind of for the rest of the summer here before training camp gets started. So make sure you're following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. All right, so the goal is to try to replicate Blackwood for Askarov, to try to kind of replicate Blackwood's performance as best you can. So what does Askarov kind of need to do better this year, right? And kind of as I was digging through the numbers and kind of looking at how they performed, right? All situations, 5-on-5, and then penalty kill. This is where you'll kind of see where Askarov needs to improve. So looking at their 5-on-5 numbers here, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll have it right here. If not, I'm going to explain it to you. Blackwood at 5-on-5 and played 844-46. Askarov played 602-46 minutes in there, again, 5-on-5. And the numbers are very, very comparable. Again, I know Blackwood played a little bit more, he faced more shots, et cetera, but the numbers are very comparable, and in some cases actually favor Askarov. So Askarov faced almost 300 shots, Blackwood a little over 450. Goals against average 298 to 269 in favor of Askarov. Save percentage 909 to 908 in favor of Blackwood. So basically a wash there. Goals allowed 42 to 27. Again, Blackwood played about 250 minutes more at 5-on-5. Expected goals allowed 41.94 to 28.2. So Askarov actually had a positive goal saved above expected, while Blackwood's was actually a slight negative. And again, very, very slight here. So you basically even. But and the high danger save percentage, 833 to 824. So Askarov clearly can replicate what Blackwood did at 5-on-5. And we saw it last year, right? The amount of times Blackwood, played extremely well behind again, same team for the most part, right? And it's not like this team was major improvements or, and even the team, there was pieces kind of picked away from it going throughout the season, but really wasn't until kind of the right before the trade deadline when everything went right with Wallman and Zetterlund and even like the CC and Granlund stuff, which was a little bit out. But if I recall correctly, Blackwood was kind of back to, or I mean, sorry, not Blackwood. Askarov was back to playing in the AHL at that time, or pretty close to playing in the AHL at that time. So, the area though where Askarov really needs to improve, right, is the penalty kill. And this is, I think, this is going to be kind of that next step for him. Is right. What's the saying? Is your best penalty killer is your goaltender. And I know the Sharks' penalty kill really fell off a cliff, right? And whether it's Nico Sturm who was out last year, and again, pieces kind of getting pulled away or whatever it was, right? But the penalty kill just wasn't the same after Blackwood left. And I think you can easily point to Blackwood being the reason for it, especially, again, when you dig behind the numbers. Penalty kill minutes, and that so 86 minutes to 47 for Blackwood. Blackwood faced 82 shots. Askarov faced 44. So similar-ish kind of shots per minute, I guess. Goals against average, though, 557. And again, this is just a PK. So, of course, those numbers are going to be kind of feel inflated to 1014. Save percentage 902 to 818 in favor of Blackwood. Goals allowed. They both allowed 8 goals, but Blackwood just more efficient penalty killer than Askarov. The expected goals allowed 13.32 to 9.78. So again, it's not like Askarov was horrible. Like the goal save above expected was 1.78, but for Blackwood it was at 532. So he saved over 5 goals saved above expected just in those 86 minutes, right? High danger save percentage 864 to 813. So when the going got tough there in those big penalty kill moments, Blackwood was at his best. And Askarov just wasn't. And like, again, right? You have a 22-year-old goalie who's played, 16 NHL games. Of course, like he's not going to be great in every situation, and that's where that veteranship of Blackwood, who's played in a bunch of games and just kind of felt it kind of knows the situations a little bit better. I think this is a big area for improvement for Askey this season. Is if you can get closer to what we saw from Blackwood on the PK, that's one going to help the Sharks penalty kill because the Sharks penalty kill was god awful last season, but two, that's going to help your overall numbers is kind of those critical penalty kill moments. If you can play as well anywhere close to what Blackwood did last year, you're going to see improvement from the San Jose Sharks because of you're just not letting in as many goals, right? And the penalty kill improves. The hope is you're not taking as many dumb penalties this season, but right. So if Blackwood can play similar to what he did last year, which is again close, maybe a notch below Blackwood, or below Blackwood at 5-on-5, and if Askarov can improve his shorthanded play, and again, if just play up a couple notches, those are the big reasons why I think the Sharks are going to improve, and especially when you compare it to the other candidates that we saw last year, the other players that we saw last year play a big chunk of games, namely Alexandar Georgiev. So we're going to dig into that and talk about why I think the goalie room is better with Askarov and Nedeljkovic compared to kind of what we saw last year post Mackenzie Blackwood. So we'll dig into the rest of the goalies here in just 1 second. All right, before we finish up Do, of course, want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. When you're done with this episode, go check out the Locked On NHL podcast. There's no off season. We're still covering you guys daily with the NHL stories that matter the most with local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, so how bad was Gorgiev? It wasn't great, guys. Let's just bring up the numbers. So Gorgiev played 31 games with the Sharks. And again, I know the Sharks team lost pieces as the season went on, but my eyes also tell me Gorgiev just wasn't as good as the other guys, right? So Gorgiev played 31 games, 388 goals against average. Remember, Blackwood, Askarov, right around 3. Gorgiev, there's a reason why they call him Forviev. 3.88. Save percentage, 875. Askarov, 896. Blackwood above 9. Goals allowed, 112 goals, all situations for Gorgiev. Expected goals allowed, 96. So he basically let in 16 more goals than expected in 31 games. Not a math guy, but that's what, 31 games, 16 goals. That's like half a goal a game more than you're expected to give up. Again, the worst team in the NHL, defense bad, et cetera, I get it. High danger save percentage, 820. So Gorgiev just the right. We would make this joke about Martin Jones all the time. Way back, right? That one coworker where just isn't pulling his weight, and anytime he's there, you're just like, "Oh, my day is gonna be worse because now I got to do more." Right? That's probably the same kind of sentiment when Gorgiev is in there. Like, not having Alexandar Georgiev play 31 games for you, and again, even if Askarov is anywhere close to what we saw last year without making an improvement, if he's close to what we saw last year, if you just run out the same numbers, he ends up with an 896 save percentage, right? Goals against average 3.1 or whatever. Like that's what you roll out for an entire season from Askarov, not counting in improvements he's going to make as he's still a young player, right? The improvements in the defense that we kind of expect with Orlov and Letty and Klingberg and Mukhamadullin. Just rolling that out and not having to have Gorgiev play 31 games for you, that right there is why I think the Sharks are going to improve. There, just the addition by subtraction of not having Alexandar Georgiev on your team. And credit to Mike Greer. Best way to tank, having garbage goaltending. He was like, guys, I know Celebrity's fun, right? Will Smith's fun, but let's do this one more time. Let me get Gorgiev. Right? Askarov not going anywhere this season. Nedeljkovic, maybe not. We'll see. But like, Askarov's not going anywhere this season. He's signed for 2 years, and he's expected to be the long-term starter for the San Jose Sharks. So just again, basically having Mackenzie Blackwood. The hope is basically having Mackenzie Blackwood-esque in net for you with Askarov on a player who should be improving throughout the season, even though, again, might be some more ups and downs, but you're hoping by the end of the season he's better than the player that he was to start the season. What about the other guys, right? And Vitek Vanecek was the other kind of main character for the Sharks last year, and his numbers pretty similar. 18 games, 388 goals against with an 882 save percentage. 63 goals allowed on a 53.4 expected goals. So he had basically minus 10 goals saved above expected, playing in 18 games. Again, not like a big math guy, but that's kind of similar to 0.5 expected goals given up per his starts or his games played, with a high danger save percentage of 781. Well, what about this new kid, right? So the Sharks they trade for Alexandar Nedeljkovic, right? Well, what's he walking into? Well, like, Nedeljkovic famously played for a bad team in the Pittsburgh Penguins. And again, Penguins slightly better than the Sharks last year, but still one of the like bottom feeders of the NHL. And the defense pretty bad as well for them, as they gave up a ton of goals. And of course, when you have Crosby, like the offense is just going to be naturally like better. But overall, the defense, pretty similar state, and the goaltending was off also for the most part pretty horrific for the Penguins. But his numbers last year, though, still an improvement on what we saw from those guys. So if Nedeljkovic can copy anywhere close to this, so he played 38 games last year, which is probably what you're going to expect, right? 35 feels about right for Nedeljkovic this season. 3.12 goals against with an 894 save percentage, 112 goals allowed on expected goals of 104. So he had a -8 goals saved above expected with an 801 high danger save percentage. But again, his -8 goals saved above expected, that came in 38 games, right? Not 18 or 20 or whatever. Like his, so less minus or a smaller goals saved above expected at -8 compared to Gorgiev, who was almost 16, and Vitek Vanacek, who was a -10, while playing he played more games than either one of those guys. So if Nedeljkovic going to be in a similar situation, if he can post those similar numbers, like that's still a massive improvement on Vitek Vanacek and what we saw from Alexandar Georgiev. So the goaltending itself, like that is the biggest reason why I think the Sharks are going to improve this year. And how many games did the Sharks lose where they had a 1-goal lead late into the game and then they end up coughing it up, right? And then they lose, they lose by 2 because of an empty net or something like that. What if your goalie just kind of closed things out here? And I think with Nedeljkovic, who I think is, again, like I don't think Nedeljkovic is a world-beating goalie and, a franchise-changing goalie, but I think he's an improvement on Vitek Vanacek, and he's especially an improvement on Alexandar Georgiev. And I think Askarov is better than all those guys I just mentioned. And if he can replicate what we saw from Mackenzie Blackwood, that's why I think the Sharks are going to be better this year, because I just think they're going to have more consistent, reliable goaltending. And again, this does not make this team a playoff team, but that -105 goal differential should drastically improve, because I think the defense is going to be better with guys like Dmitry Orlov and with Nick Leddy, like we talked about yesterday with something. So, like, I think that those guys are going to be an improvement on the guys you had last year, right? And John Klingberg, definitely the wild card of the group, but a guy who can have, I think is going to show more offensive improvement. And like he's still, I think, got some gas in the tank. I don't know why. Maybe it's the teal color glasses, but and again, Mukko Madulin, who was playing very well before he got hurt. If Sam Dickinson can make the team, I do think the defense will improve. So, yes, this is not a, like an 80-point team or anything like that. But that jump from 50 to 65, if you're a lot of those games that you lose by 1, if you win half of those because your goaltending is better and because you're not giving up 4 goals a game with Alexandar Georgiev, and then you're not pressing for offense, I think the Sharks can kind of keep things a little bit more close to the vest and buttoned up. And I think Askarov and Nedeljkovic, I think they can play at least kind of close to league average goaltending compared to what we've seen recently. So yes, I believe in Askarov. Like I've been a huge believer in Askarov. And I think Nedeljkovic is an improvement on what we saw especially from Gorgiev. And I think he's an improvement on what we saw from Vitek Vanacek. So that's going to be it for me today. We'll be back next week as we continue to be back down to 3 episodes a week. So we'll be back Sunday night, Monday. So make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at My Fry Hole. Till next week. Bye, friends.